welcome everybody. I know people are still kind of going to be filtering in here, so we'll kind of give it one more minute here. But while we're waiting for people to filter in, welcome everybody to the June meeting. Yes, we're having it a little bit early this month, but hey, that's fine with us. I don't have any real announcements for this month other than our next meeting in July will be most likely at its normal time, third Wednesday. So plan for that. And let's see, if you missed last month's meeting with Dave Helmley from Adobe, it is up on the YouTube page for the group. So please go there to check it out. It was a really good meeting. There's a ton of stuff that was there that, like, I've been using Premiere for 20 something years, and I didn't even know a few of the things that he talked about. And I actually changed my workflow, and I'm actually going to be buying some new hardware based on that meeting. So yeah, it's there's a lot of good stuff there. So go back on the YouTube channel and watch that if you haven't seen it. DJ, do you have anything that we should mention before we get started?
Adobe Max is free. Go do that.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I can't think of anything.
I'm going to shamelessly plug DJ's new demo reel. DJ's put out a new reel that for his motion graphic stuff that is just freaking amazing. I mean, I've worked with DJ. I mean, we've been friends for a long time, and I hire him to do stuff for my company. But man, it's just every once in a while, DJ posts stuff up that's like, wow, I am vastly either underpaying that guy or completely underutilizing him. And DJ's new reel is definitely a case of that. I mean, for me, just watching it is amazing. So
thank you. That's you're way too kind. I sincerely appreciate it and don't know what else to say beyond that. So thank you.
So anyway, all right. Well, we will kick this thing off, and as people kind of come in, I will let them in. So I am super excited for this meeting because the presenter that we have tonight, I've been badgering him subtly on Twitter for a few years now. To come present, because I think he is one of the most talented guys out there. He's a super nice guy. Rob Ashe is the lead editor for the Conan O'Brien show. And Rob, how long have you been doing that?
I've been in the Conan family for the past, I think 12 years now. And I've been lead for the past 7.
Yeah, so I first met Rob at a Edit Fest years ago. You were on a panel at the end for the Norm Holland's Lean Forward moment. I remember the film you selected. It was Up. Mm-hmm. And the thing I remember from that, so the whole thing was that the editors that were up on the panel were supposed to show a clip that kind of exemplified why they got into editing, and it meant a lot to them, and showed the power of editing. And Rob showed the montage at the beginning of Up that kind of sets up the whole story of the main character. And I think I showed it at a user group meeting a few years ago. And if you don't well up a little bit watching that, you have no soul, in my opinion. But I remember the thing I remember is that you showed that, and then like the lights came up, and some woman like a few seats over to me, she was in tears, and she goes, "Damn you!" It was so funny. But anyway, I remember talking at the party afterwards, and yeah, just super nice. And so. But yeah, I've been wanting him to present just because the work that he does at the Conan show is amazing. I know they use Premiere. I think you guys are still using Premiere for it. You did that great Final Cut 10 video years ago. Mm-hmm. Dave Helmley told us that we should tell you to wear your Freddie Mercury playback T-shirt. I forgot to mention that.
It doesn't fit. It's COVID weight. COVID weight, that's impossible.
But anyway, I'm going to stop talking because Rob Ashe is just an amazing guy, and he is going to share with us what his career is like and what he's done on the show, and talk to us about just all things his work. So with that, Rob Ashe, take it away, man.
Hey, okay. Hi, everybody. I haven't done one of these in a long time, so this will be fun. So yes, my name is Rob Ashe. I have been in the Conan family for the past 12 years. I guess the best place to start to explain my career was I wasn't supposed to be an editor. I was supposed to be an actor. I did theater. I toured a bunch of the United States playing the genie in Aladdin. And I moved out here to, make my way out into Hollywood and be in TV and film. And I got here with a bunch of friends of mine, and we discovered that you need tape to get an agent. You need to show them that you can act on video instead of on a stage. So we got together. We decided to film a bunch of scenes ourselves, because back in them days, you had to pay companies about $40,000 to $50,000 to film 90 seconds worth of material. So it became a really simple situation of, okay, you do the lights and you do the mic, and who will hold the camera? And then at the end, they're like, okay, well, who will put it together? And I had a borrowed version of Adobe Premiere original 5.1, the kind that, didn't have like one video track to edit, had like overlapping A and B sides where you add cross dissolves, that sort of thing. So I put together the scenes, and we all had our demo reels. And instead of me getting calls for agents, I got calls from other actors asking, oh, I heard you did Rich's demo reel. Could you do mine? And slowly but surely, those calls, instead of coming from actors, started coming from studios to start doing reels for awards, the NAACP awards, highlight reel type stuff. And then the weirdest part of my break came from doing extra work in a show called Angel, which was a spinoff of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I became really good friends with one of the stars, and he got me involved on the Warner Brothers side of things, because I made him a deal. I would make him a demo reel for his agent of all his work on the show if he would be in my short film. So he showed the short film to Warner Brothers, and all of a sudden I started getting stars of shows coming over to my little apartment to make, these little presentation reels for them to get shot at bigger stardom. For example, having a young WB star in there, I made a reel for him to go to Star Wars, that sort of thing, basically like being able to present these actors in new ways. So from there, the people that I was making friends with along the way, they started getting better jobs. They started like landing real television shows. And so that level of work started getting passed on to me. Then I broke into doing visual effects for a special effects makeup company that started landing big jobs. Like we worked on Passion of the Christ, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. And from there, quite honestly, leading into the Conan family, it was a case of my wife working for David Kissinger, who is the producer of Conan O'Brien's production company, and something just as simple as me seeing an ad in the paper that Conan O'Brien's moving out to do the Tonight Show in Los Angeles. And I just sent him a note saying, hey, would you mind dropping my name in for this? And I got a call on a Thursday. I remember because I was teaching an AVID class, and they said, could you be here in an hour? And I went in and interviewed, and they said, could you start tomorrow? We just need you for 2 weeks. And I got someone to cover my class. And after 2 weeks, they didn't tell me to leave. And, another week went by, and another Friday went by, and they still didn't tell me to leave. And then we had about a 3-month lead up to the first episode of The Tonight Show. Because I remember, the night before the first show, I went into the producer's office. I was like, so I work here, right? And she was like, oh my God, yeah. And I've been with the company ever since, from the time with The Tonight Show, after everything that happened in the end there. I jumped on working with Robert Smigel, who, for those that don't know, is Triumph, the Insult Comic Dog, helping out doing segments for him for Conan O'Brien's national tour, which almost immediately led into the birth of my first child. And I had about 2 weeks off, and then we jumped on prepping for Conan on TBS. And I went 3 to 4 years through there. And I had a talk with the original lead editor of the show, Dan Dome, and he told me he was thinking about moving on to Late Night with Seth Meyers. Would I be interested in taking his place? Well, I just so happened to had who had led the first season of the Pete Holmes Show, which was a follow-up to Conan, but still produced by Conan's company. And so it was easy for everyone to see me in that job. So I jumped on over. And once I jumped on over, the job almost immediately changed because we started doing the travel shows. We started doing the specials, the documentary work, the pilots, the multiple other series and pilots that I had to oversee. And so we had to recalibrate everything we were doing at that point, as well as, when we would travel down to San Diego to do Comic-Con. And then, hey, about a year ago, all this started. And so we had to recalibrate again how we did the show. And I remember because I think we were going to start a 2-week hiatus, and we just never came back. And I remember I got a call about a month later from Jeff Ross, our executive producer, saying that we want to be on the air in 6 days. How do we do it? So then we had to rethink everything about how we knew how to do the show, and had to kind of wipe everything out and start from scratch in terms of like, how can we actually pull this off based on the clock that we face every day and doing a daily television show. And so, I could break that down a little bit in terms of, what the thought process was. But, from there, things got easier. Like, technology started catching up, and, vendors started helping out. We moved our show to Largo in Los Angeles. And we've been doing shows there now for the past 7 or 8 months, I would say. And, our run's coming to an end. So we got, after this week, I think we have 3 weeks left of shows. And then that will be our 11-year run. That's me in 5 minutes. Hopefully it was just 5. Tell me it wasn't 20.
You're good.
Okay, so I would like to know what you guys are interested in hearing about, because I could tell you all sorts of stuff. So if anyone would like to chime in.
Floor is open, everybody.
Okay.
So,
All right, everybody.
can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, awesome. So I'm like blown away with the editing on these shows. I'm totally stunned because it's moving so fast.
Yes.
And I'd like you to talk about how does the creative actually roll out, and how do the different players intertwine? Because it looks like you're one body when you watch it. It's so tight. It's like a great band that's been playing for 20 years, and they know what each other is going to do almost, but that can't be the case.
Quite often you'd be surprised at how well that is the case, how often that is the case. I mean, I've known almost everybody on the show for almost a decade, so I can kind of, if Jose Arroyo, one of our writers, comes to me with a piece, we're at the point now between the two of us where he can hand me a script and hand me the footage and be like, show me the cut. There's not much I really need from him in that point, at least, in the initial, once we really start, carving something out. I am really just a big believer, and this is something I've really come to terms with in the past year. I'm a big believer in it. What did someone on Twitter call it the other night? They called it the vomit method of editing, which is basically get something on a timeline, something that basically resembles of what you're going for, because anything else doesn't matter. You can talk about the script, you can talk about the footage of what you think you have versus what you don't, but until you see a completed idea, even if it sucks, you need to see something on a timeline. And that is almost everything that is based in how we calibrate like our workflow, how we execute pieces. So like, I don't even want to talk to anybody until I have a cut to show, because then we can actually get something done. Because there is everything we do basically is speed chess. It's a speed chess version of editing. So a lot of it has to be instinctual. You have to know, you have to kind of hear the song in your head when you read the script. You have to understand where the setup, the chorus is, the bridge, when to hold, when to cut tight, when to jump, all these sort of things. And it's just a skill set that really is, I'm going to sound like, and to sound like Jeff Bridges, he was like jazz, man. But it really is, when you're working that quick, it is a version of speed chess that is like jazz, where you just have to just do it and get it done and get it done and get it done. And the beauty about it is, do you guys see that movie Soul that just came out? Like, I'm a big fan of Pixar, obviously, but I loved, when they're demonstrating, that area where people are just in their zone. And that's a lot of what this job ends up being, because when you're moving, you're just not thinking about anything. You're just in it, and you just get lost in it. And that's the place I love to be, and that's what keeps me going on this job all the time.
So are you involved conceptually at the front then?
I'm involved conceptually if there are technical challenges to pull it off. Okay. If it's a Conan remote, a man on the street where he's going to film, they know what they're doing. They don't need to hear from me. But if it's, hi, we're going to film in Cuba, how do we do that? And how do we bring back the footage without getting, it taken away by police? That sort of thing. That's where I start getting involved on the conceptual stage. When we work outside of our comfort zone in terms of, I was just watching it today, the opening of Comic-Con, which was an animated version of Into the Spider-Verse. We did a parody of that. Well, how do we do that? How do we work with an animation company to execute this sort of thing? What do they need? How can we do this, and do this in a way that the animation company is going to be vastly uncomfortable with, in the rapid fire nature of the schedule, but to make their life easy and our life easy, because I know how everybody works.
How did you end up with unique knowledge of smuggling footage across borders that nobody else on the crew seems to have?
It becomes the original idea of trying to think of things that other people aren't thinking of. So it's not about smuggling footage. It's about, well, how do we give ourselves the outcome of getting it no matter what? And so there's, in that case, we just sent people on different flights in different directions. And that was the suggestion I had. It's not that nobody can think of things. It's just that as a group thing, my talent, if I have any in this business, is trying to figure out, unique ways of, solving these issues. And honestly, a lot of these conversations start with post. So, if they asked the camera guys, of course, they would have had their own solution that most definitely would have worked as well. But it started with me, so, I offered that as a solution.
When the pandemic scrambled your whole workflow and everybody
Yes.
was presumably working from home, how were you able to maintain communications across your team with the minimal disruption?
So it's a great keyword to bring up, disruption. So one of the things we immediately had to acknowledge was we were going to have nothing but disruption. There was going to be no peaceful way of getting this show done. I have 3 kids. You hear them in the background. I have 2 dogs. I'm editing in my kitchen. That's how I get the show done. And, people think I'm joking about that. Hold on. Watch this fancy technology of 2 cameras. This is my kitchen. Here's my edit system. And now the reason why it's being done that way was I had 6 days to figure out, how to get it done. So and that mindset was honestly how we approached the whole thing. So you want a show on in 6 days. Warner Brothers has cut our access off to the lot. We can no longer use any equipment, any cameras, anything we have there. So how do we get a show on the air? The first question is, what does Conan know how to do? when it comes to cameras, when it comes to apps, when it comes to any of that. Well, the two things I knew for sure was he knows how to use an iPhone and he knows how to use Zoom. So the very first idea was we're doing the show on Zoom because that's the only way we're getting this done. And so once we got a show on the air and we started moving with it, and they started like exploring the format, trying to get some comedy out of it, as much as they can with the different Zoom panels and stuff like that, then we could slowly evolve. We can make the cameras better. We can make the converters better once the camera guys and stuff were allowed to leave their homes and start filming things. We could go to a comedy theater and start using that as our stage. They have lighting, it works out great. Now, hey, let's is there a way to use our studio cameras and get them to Warner Brothers without any kind of disruption to the workflow? Okay, well, we found this company called Live View, which basically sets up a antenna that goes to basically a deck on the other side that basically plugged into our ingest as if we were filming in the studio next door. So now, our workflow with how we do the show during the pandemic is night and day between how we started, but you had to start somewhere. So it's almost that same approach when it came to editing, where it's like that vomit method. It's like, let's just get a show on the air, then we can move forward, then we can refine. Because, a big thing, especially in late night, and Conan told me when we were prepping this show originally, he was like, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. You think it's about, burning yourself out, trying to get that one thing done. Well, it's like, no, because you got a show tomorrow. You know what I mean? You can't burn out now, buddy. You got to pace yourself out. You know what I mean?
What was your day-to-day before the pandemic? Like, how did that workflow go?
Oh, so a typical day in the old days was basically I would get there at 10 a.m. I would do meetings and emails for an hour. While we would wait for the morning rundown to come out. Morning rundown was what they think is going to be in the show that day. And then from 11 to 1:30, we would cut whatever segment would be for that day. So that could be something as complicated as a 7-minute remote. That could be something as uncomplicated as a 20-second clip that's just in and out. It really depended on the day. And sometimes there were, 5 versions of very hard things. So you had to, pace out the day as intelligently as you could. Because at 1:30, it hit the rehearsal floor in front of Conan, in front of Andy, in front of everybody else. They would watch and rate. And, usually if you weren't almost all the way there into a complete idea, it would not live unless there was some very specific part of it that had like real potential that they thought could, hold for the next day. Or part of the challenge always was that these things are daily, based on daily news. So, and especially in this, modern landscape that we're in, yesterday's story feels like 7 years ago sometimes. So you really had to be on top of things. Luckily, though, you can mix it up with some pieces. If Conan would do a general man on the street piece, that would definitely like break up the flow of having everything need to be daily, because those pieces would get more time. So we would complete rehearsal by 2:30. And then whatever lived for that day, you would spend 2:30 to 4:30 making it right, fixing whatever problems you may have, or depending on the day, honestly, making something entirely new. By 4 o'clock, Conan would be prepping for his monologue in his dressing room. So you had one last chance to show him something if something had a question mark behind it. And that was always the trickiest one, because the monologue writers are big critics, So if you got by, they would film the show at 4:30. Back in our 1 hour days, we go 4:30 to 5:30. And then we're on the air at 8 o'clock. So from 5:30 to 8 was spent bringing the show to time. doing whatever kind of camera corrections for the technical director, whatever kind of, whatever issues could come up in particular shows. And, hey, some shows had no issues at all. Some shows we were 12 minutes over and it was a war zone trying to figure out who would give it up. But that's the nature of it all. Once again, it's speed chess. The beauty about it is if you get assigned something that maybe you're not too into, don't worry about it. Tomorrow you'll get something new. So,
Were there a lot of bits that you would edit that wouldn't make it to air?
Probably 30%, maybe. But that would be a general batting average. You didn't have much control over what you were given, so that'd be part of it. But there was, some things would get other uses too, because like we would do these scrap shows where there'd be shows of rehearsals where we just, cut together rehearsals because sometimes, hearing them rip on a piece that just wasn't quite there is funnier than the piece ever could be. Sometimes that happens. But in terms of, there's one legendary piece that I'm trying to get them to air. There's actually two, but there's one in particular that has been presented so many times over the course of a few years. And every editor who's ever gone through our doors has done a version of it. So I'm just hoping they air it, and I keep pushing them to try to do it, and just because I would get much joy out of that. So,
Oh yeah, I mean, even if they put it on Conan's YouTube, it'd be great. Now I'm really curious what it is.
Hopefully one day I can share that story with you, because I think it's a funny piece personally, but it happens.
I'm kind of curious that, I remember hearing Adam Epstein talk about when he was at SNL about like how that workflow went, and like, and hearing, the production side and how quickly they had to work, and then how fast editorial had to work. And I guess you were talking about how you have that time each day to get this. Are the bits that you're editing shot that morning, or how far in advance is the production on the stuff that you get? I mean, I'm assuming it's not, because it sounds like the way you described it, they're shooting that morning. Every day is sort of an SNL situation where you're shooting in the morning, you're editing in the afternoon, and you've got to make it happen.
So I would say about 80% of the materials that day. Any longer piece, with a few exceptions, like, let's just call them remotes, man on the streets, him going to learn how to do a job, so on and so forth. Stuff that's 7-8 minutes long, that usually has a little bit of time. In the last few years, that time has gotten way tinier. Like, was a great example. We did a remote where Conan went to the opening of Magic Mike with all the females on staff. And God, when did they film that? It was a Wednesday. They filmed it Wednesday, 10 p.m. and it was on the next day's show. And I remember that one in particular because I had to wake up at 3 a.m. to go to work just to make sure that it could be done because they filmed 10 hours worth of stuff. So it was a busy day. And I mean, I could not have gotten that particular one. Our assistant editor was just amazing because she stayed there all night too. And like she worked her ass off and, I couldn't have done it without her. But so there is sometimes when the clock would be very tiny. Sometimes it would be due to sponsored segments that had to air on a certain day, and regardless, they had to be filmed on another day, that sort of thing. I think the tightest schedule we ever had was for probably a tie between the two travel shows for Haiti and Greenland. I think Haiti, we had 6 days to put the whole episode together, and it was about 26 hours worth of footage, and for an hour show, and There was a lot of good stuff too. Greenland, I think, had less days, but a lot less footage too. I think we had like 11 hours for Greenland, but we had like 4 to 5 days to get it on the air. And both of those were cases of because basically the setups for each show was based on news of the day, type setups. So they had to be done quick before people forgot what they even were.
Any other questions? Michael, do you have your hand up?
Once you have the show locked, how do you get it to air?
Sure. So that's changed somewhat throughout the years, and now it's been brought back to originally how we were doing it. So do you guys know what an EVS server is? EVS server is basically just a very fancy playback machine. So when I'm done with Act 1, I edit Act 1 for the show, the monologue, the comedy, whatever. I send it out as a quick time. It goes to the playback server. Playback server plays it through a fiber line and with a satellite backup that goes down to Atlanta and TBS. And they're recording us on an Avid. And, their recorded input goes into their server and they add, whatever metadata they need. And then we're done. There has been a case, I'll probably get in trouble if I share this anyway, where we played the show from our edit room. That was kind of a scary day because it was literally, I'm still not quite sure what happened, but it was we delivered the show and we were leaving and all of a sudden they're like, hey, can you call us? And we called and they're like, would you mind playing back the act from your edit room while it airs? And we're like, but you got it, right? And they're like, oh yeah, we got it. But you need us to play it back? Yeah, just if you could. And then, so Chris Heller in Edit 2, had to do the honors. So, he's sitting there and playing. And we're watching TBS, and we're like, that's our edit room. We know that's our edit room. Because it looked, they must have patched us in whatever way they had to make it work. But it looked physically different, compression-wise, from like the rest of the show. It was just for one act, but that was kind of a very amusing day. That was one of those days when it was over, when we all just kind of fell over and laid on the floor for 45 minutes. Quite more
nerve-wracking.
Yeah, but anyway, so it would get fed, and so if you're thinking about the clock, like I said, we filmed from 4:30 to 5:30. We're on the air at 8. Well, they need the whole show before we're on the air. So if we're a 44-minute show, that means we got to be done by 7:15. So now I've just taken 45 minutes off that clock. So it had to be a very, very precise execution. And most days it was never an issue because, we knew what we were doing. But there were some days where I turned in Act 1 about 15 seconds before we were on the air. So, who wants to live in their 80s? You know what I mean? Like, anyway. I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely. I used to run a television news operation, and it sounds pretty much like what we did. That stuff would roll right up to 6 o'clock, and we'd all sit there with our fingers crossed to say, "I hope it gets on the air."
Yeah, but you're trying to educate your crowd. We're trying to make them laugh with fart noises. So, thank you for your service. But anyway, hey, entertainment's entertainment. What are you gonna do?
Since you brought up living into your 80s, how do you guys actually manage the stress of what you do day in and day out? Like, it's a real thing after 12 years. It's got to be.
It definitely is a real thing. It's evolved, quite honestly, because the things you find stressful change. I mean, they really do. Like, I remember when I started, like on the Tonight Show, there'd be days where I would go home and I'd be shaking just because, that last minute stuff. And there was part of me in the end when we got canceled, I was like, I don't have to deal with that anymore. But now doing the show, like I don't, you know, doing the show part doesn't worry me at all. It's when we have to, when they tell me, hey, we're going to Haiti and we got to air in 7 days. That's where I start going. A lot of it is understanding when to stand up, understanding when to, get away from your computer, understanding that at the end of the day, you're not changing the world. You're just trying to entertain some people. You're trying to make it the best you can. But sometimes it can't be what they want it to be. And that's okay. That doesn't mean you're bad in any way, because you want it to be good. And for me, that to me is a very helpful thing to understand, is that I'm sure all of you guys, when you edit, you can come across pieces where you'll get frustrated with either the material you've been handed or the situation you've been handed. And I take solace in the fact when I find myself kind of falling into a puddle of mud, if you will, about that sort of thing, is that when I'm frustrated, it's because I want it to be good. And I think that helps with the stress, and it helps with how you frame it, like in your head, because you're not coming from a place of, these guys, why is there a mic in the shot? I can't believe they didn't blah, blah, You just want your thing to be good. That's why you're upset about it. But the big hidden secret about it is so do they. Despite whatever you may believe about any of the people you work with, I guarantee you they don't want to be bad at what they do. They might not care as much. They might not be invested as much. And so little details may, get across, but their intention is not to be bad. And you never know what situation they've been dealt with. I couldn't imagine, the guys, that go on these travel shoots, the situation they're given, they go to Cuba, get in a van, and they open the door and go. There's no plan, so stuff's going to happen, man. But that's also where the really good stuff comes out of, but when doing that, technical things are going to go wrong. There's going to be challenges, that sort of thing. So I think the stress of it is you have to understand that sometimes the stress of it is, for me, might not be for you, is the fear of getting blamed for things that you couldn't control. Why is there a mic in the shot, Rob? Well, there was a mic in the shot. Some people may take that as, how dare you, Rob, have that? Well, I had the mic in the shot because it's the funniest shot, and I don't care if there's a mic, and that's what matters. I once had a conversation with Conan when it came to these technical things, and he told me, he was like, the laugh is all that matters. It doesn't matter that, we're, what was it? It was, we were talking about the travel show. He was like, you guys can go back and make your National Geographic special. I'm just trying to make some comedy, and that to me was a great point. And it freed a lot of the stress of doing those shows for me, of understanding that it's comedy. It's comedy. It's a joke. It's a form. It's a device to present jokes, and hopefully jokes that can also help you understand a culture, or and that's that nice part of everything comes into play.
I got another question.
Go for it.
Yeah. So where do you look for inspiration when you're looking to,
TikTok.
TikTok.
I'm not joking.
That's it?
Have you watched TikTok?
Little. Yeah.
Here's the thing about TikTok. These are the people who are coming up, and they're coming up with inventive ways of what can I do with a phone, and how can I edit that together in meaningful ways. Just do yourself a favor. Look, I know it's certain social media can have a certain stigma, for looking at it, but just look at hashtag transitions on TikTok and watch what people are doing with their phone just to get from one shot to the next. It's amazing work. That's number one to me, because I want to see what the next generation is coming up with. Because, you know, I gotta keep up with them kids, you know what I mean? Because if you're getting outdone by, you know, someone with an iPhone, you got to ask yourself, well, you know, maybe you should, you know, branch out a little bit and start opening up your tool set, because that's all this really is. You know, I'm a big proponent of anyone can learn to edit, but the great people are the people who have the widest amount of paintbrushes, the widest amount of paints, because they can call on it really quick. Does that make sense? Like, I'm explaining, because it's, you know, late night editing in particular, a lot of it is about breaking down genre, because almost every piece of comedy is kind of a spoof on something. So in order to really kind of put together and break down what a spoof is, you have to understand all the elements of it. If they're filming a mock scene from Lost, let's say, well, what does Lost look like? What does the color look like? What does the graphic sound? You know, what kind of sounds are there in there? How can I break that apart so I can recreate it in a way that lets the audience know that they're in their environment, but now, you know, hit them with some jokes. You know, so that's a big part of it for me. It used to be, but getting back to the original thing, in terms of inspiration, it used to be a lot of music videos, but it's just not a thing anymore. You know, so gotta find it somewhere.
It's a lot less, at least.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
And in short form, you know, that's where you're gonna find, and YouTube, honestly, too. Like, you know, in the same regard, just you know, the kind of material that people are able to execute is mind blowing to me.
We just started watching some of the old, you know, the original comedy, and we turned the volume off, and it's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
It's just, the editing is what's incredible, and the performances are just off the charts. I mean, some of the classic stuff, it's unbelievable.
What I appreciate about it in particular is I enjoy anything that'll break genre. I think this will be a clip you can clip out for the YouTube. I think most filmmaking is pretentious in the regards of, there's a construct into how you make a movie that has to be done in a certain way. And I appreciate anyone who just breaks that and smashes it on the ground and says, no, we can do it this way. Why does editing have to be this way? Why does it have to be shot this way? Why does it have to sound a certain way? That sort of thing. I appreciate anybody who could break that. Now, you know, when you break something, you can crash and burn, of course, but you also get those people who really break through. And it's amazing. You know, what's
Cool.
Just on Netflix, Eric Andre and forget the name of it. I did watch it though. Anybody? No.
A prank movie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's
I forgot the name of it too.
Genres. It's a prank movie, but they also put a movie into it, which I thought was a fun idea. You know, and it was a really interesting like exploration and pace, because it was basically you had narrative scenes, and then they'd stop and like be in the middle of real people. Like they did a musical number in the middle of a mall full of people who had no idea there was a movie going on, which I thought was hysterical. You know, so anybody who could break the formula, to me, I'm a big fan of, and that's who I draw inspiration from.
John, did you have another question?
Not really, just having fun with it. I'm thinking it must be really hard to make comedy. You were talking about being stressed. It seemed like we were talking a lot about perspective and mindset. I wondered, you know, what's it like to create comedy, or how important is the environment in which you're creating comedy? Like if people are intense or uptight or worried about the deadline or stressed, does that completely different than if everybody's treating it like the work is actually funny too? Like the process of doing the work is funny and we're having a great time and it's a party kind of thing. I mean, how much, not a party obviously, but how much do you work to create a certain environment? Like it happens on a lot of sets when we're shooting. sometimes the environment's the thing that lets the actors reach their place, or it lets them feel alive and we're responding to them. How's that work in your world?
A lot of it, and what's helpful is there's a really good understanding of that. Oh, you moved over here. Does anyone do this in like grid view? They actually look at the person they're talking to. Yeah, that's funny. Anyway, a lot of for me, going back to that original vomit method, is you create the environment once you're there, once you're on a timeline. It's everything else is stress, and everybody else around you, around me, at my job understands that. They're the same way. They want to get to a point where there's something on a timeline because now you can play, and that's the place. The protected place, like it's the closest an editor has to a writer's room. It's when something is on your timeline and you really get to start, making some music with it. And I think the quicker you can get there, that's how you can create that proper environment. And that's why, I really do feel like I skip a bunch of steps sometimes to get to that first cut, but it's because I'm interested in getting there. Does that make sense?
Total sense. We do a lot of fast-paced edits for short, stupid corporate things,
Yeah.
and definitely, you can agonize over which is the perfect shot, or you can throw a whole bunch of shots down and then decide, hey, are we even on the right beat or not? But starting with a timeline full of stuff is the first, and surprisingly how often you throw some stuff down and it's actually good. You're like, how could that be good when I didn't even think about it? I just threw a couple things in there and it just worked.
I think there's something to, and people sometimes believe when you're putting comedy together that you're not thinking about things in this way. You have to understand the complete idea of something. So I can't judge a shot. I can't judge a moment until I understand how it relates to everything else. Because you could have the best punchline in the world, you got the best joke in the world, but if it's not structurally making sense of where it is in the piece, when it is in the piece, then it's just not going to work. You're just going to have you get your laugh out of it, but no one's going to walk away from the piece going, oh, it was but that one joke, no one ever says that about comedy, and yeah, so. Ultimately, I think, though, getting to the place where you're just creating, fight for that every chance you can get.
What about just communicating with the team? Does your team completely leave you alone when you're in the moment? Do you and then lift your head up like a snorkel or like a periscope?
That's kind of funny at this point. So I'm honestly not the best communicator in the world. I'm a big believer in, if I hired you, you're great. And so there's a lot I shouldn't have to tell you. Sometimes I'm wrong. Absolutely. And especially in new environments when there's a new challenge where we're doing things a new way. It's like, no, I have to sit, I need to talk to everybody. And as the years have gone on, I've tried to get a lot better at that. I will say, I'm just a big fan of less words. And sometimes that's the wrong decision. I would say during the pandemic, I was talking to our head graphics guy and he told me they have Zoom meetings every morning. I was like, what? I don't want to talk to anybody. So, we communicate just through an iMessage thread. We tried a bunch of stuff. We tried Slack. We tried some blog thing that people were using for work. And anyway, we tried a bunch of digital tools. It was no, we all just have iPhones. Let's just do iMessage. And so our whole pandemic, we had 7 different text threads for different departments. And no one has an Android, so it kind of looks.
Have you ever saved a comedy bit, something that might not have been the funniest or something that wasn't going to work, but then in the edit you were able to salvage it and save it and make it funnier?
I hesitate to use the word saved because here's why. It existed. It was in the footage. I didn't make it something out of nothing. They handed me something and I made that. So I didn't save anything. But I will say you can make things more clear. And that's a big part of what you're doing in comedy, is trying to make people understand what the joke is. And there is, actually bring up a screen. There's one piece in particular that comes to mind. There's one piece in particular that comes to mind. It was a remote with Jordan Schlansky and Conan. And the whole premise of the remote was it was going to an escape room. You guys know what an escape room is? So here's the challenge with it. I mean, obviously, it's Conan and Jordan. There's a certain amount of comedy that's absolutely going to work no matter what. But a lot of the premise of the jokes was based on a lot of words of the puzzle. You know? And a lot of the puzzles are on little pieces of paper. So there's a lot of footage of this. You know, Roman's Manello is wearing size 6 shoes. And a lot of them were very long and complicated. So it's like, how do you actually get people to understand what you're trying to do? I'm going to get you to a good part. And you also want to get the crowd to kind of follow along a little bit to what they're talking about, because hopefully they'll enjoy it.
And understand what lies ahead of us.
3, 2, 3, 2. This will get you started. This puzzle, it says 3, 2, 3, 2 at the top. So I'm going to circle every third. Then I'm going to circle every second.
6.
I've left something.
Go ahead.
Under.
Skip ahead.
There's
the
under my
typewriter. Watch out.
Ah! First, this is it. This is the first key. What's it say?
Shortest guy does not wear the smallest shoes.
This key opened up this drawer. Suspects.
Here we go. Shoe size.
The guy with the shoe size 11 is either Peanuts Romanello or is from Hollywood. The guy from Boyle Heights is 6 feet tall. Johnny Tomatoes is not from Hollywood, and neither is the guy who is 6'1". What? This guy is a crappy detective.
The guy from 11 is either Peanuts.
Okay. So, boom, there we go. Okay. So the camera was just this, you know, him reading all this stuff. So there's two things I wanted to execute. Was I want to overwhelm the audience with information. Secondly, I wanted to protect the escape room, because they asked that we not actually present the actual riddles of that particular attraction, so people could go and not, you know how to do it, because apparently there were prizes associated with, whoever gets the fastest time. So I would mix and match actually clues. And so they couldn't figure out their way around it. So I was just like, give me all the clues, because they had pieces of paper. I just scanned them all in and just threw them on my timeline. I was like, okay, we actually have to show this and actually have to understand at least some of the work that goes into like solving these things. And that was probably one of the biggest instances of, being able to help through a pure editing solution. One other comes to mind is during the travel show to Armenia, which Conan took his assistant Sona to Armenia because she has family there. It was our first shot at doing a very serious segment where she went to the Armenian Genocide Memorial, and she spoke about her grandfather's story. And it was definitely a change of pace for us. And I remember going in, people were like, all the producers, everybody was kind of avoiding touching the segment. And because it was going into a lot of history and stuff like that. And I asked them, I was like, can you just let me put this together because I have an idea here. And a lot of it was when they went and filmed at the memorial, they spoke a lot about history and a lot about, government figures that were coming to play at that time and stuff like that. I just thought to myself, I was like, we can't, what better way to try to tell a story like that through something that's just personal? So I just cut out everything talking about countries and stuff like that and just let Sona talk about her grandpa. Like, because that's all that matters in that story. And that was definitely a case of where and it's an odd feeling too, because we screened the show. So obviously we have a studio audience, and we screened a bunch of people from Armenian youth groups and other groups and support groups and stuff like that all came to see the show. And I actually got to sit in the audience during that segment, and I like, you could hear a pin drop in there. And so it's a very, you don't get to have a reaction like that, be a positive, when you work on a comedy show. So it was a very I was very honored to be a part of that segment. Now, I mean, I suppose there's, on the flip side of it, there's definitely segments I probably have done my writers a disservice for, but none of those come to mind. So
That's awesome.
Can we lean to the technical side for just a second? When you get footage that you're going to ingest of, say, roll-ins that are shot out in the field, are those multiple camera? And is the audio single system or double system? Or basically, what kind of headaches does that cause you in terms of syncing everything up and then editing from there?
So it's usually the remotes are 2 to 3 cameras. Usually there's not a slate. There's usually the time code's a little bit off because of the run and gun nature. We tried everything, every approach, every automated approach, pluralize, any kind of waveform matching. Nothing ever would help. The best way was just to go in and do it manually. And it ended up just being faster. And sometimes that's the simplest way to go. Going back to, talking about like the stress of the thing, you just kind of had to accept that was going to be part of it. And so you put in the time. In terms of the actual, so our audio guy in the field, he records on a Dugan, and the Dugan also goes into camera A. So there's basically like a premix that goes onto camera A, and then he has a card that also records any ISO if we need it later. And honestly, most of the time we don't. But usually when we do, we need it a lot. Like, it's not just for one line. It's because just something overall went wrong, whether it be like someone's particular mic was just off. And, but 99 times out of 100, it was just fine. But usually, honestly, from the audio perspective, most of the time the issue was Conan is being filmed and he's on TV and knows how to speak in front of a mic. And he's talking to someone on the street who doesn't know how to speak on the mic and just really, oh, hi, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. So a lot of it's just evening out some levels.
Was there ever a moment where, during a remote, where there is someone who just, the audio just did not work at all, and you ended up not being able to use that segment, even though, Conan said something super funny or something like that?
Oh, so much so that, like, we had to cut him out entirely. I don't know if entirely would be the case, but I know there's been cases where we could have shown a lot more. And
because I do notice there are times where like you'll do like kind of like a self-deprecating humor with like text on screen, like explaining like Conan couldn't do this because blah 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 or something.
Yeah, but usually like what I would equate to that being so much a problem would be like there would be like a loud ring on the mic where it's like, no, you're going to hurt somebody if we air this, that sort of thing. And that was really like the technical line. You know, that's the beauty about not being a film or, you know, a narrative show. It's like, you know, no, you know, we're the show that shows the boom shot, you know, and because we, you know, we don't care. But so if it was so bad, it was because the audience would suffer. Now, I've had what I would call disagreements with the network sometimes when it comes to what they consider to be acceptable. And sometimes that's a negotiation because they're coming also from a viewpoint of most 95% of our programming's narrative and is controlled and stuff. And, you know, usually we don't air this sort of thing. It's like, no, dude, we're a live camera show. Like, you know, we're gonna, so.
A question I had was, you know, being that you're doing comedy every day, you know, you're human. And I know there's days where you probably go to work and whatever is happening in your personal life, you know, or your family life, whatever, you're just like, I don't feel funny today, you know, and, you know, you just, how are those days for you when you've got to go in and, you know, be funny, man, cut this up, make this humorous, but yet you've got whatever going on that you're just like, you know, how do you get through those days? Do you have a strategy? Is there something, do you just compartmentalize it and say, okay, all that stuff, I'm just putting it behind me and I got to be funny here at work? Or, you know, what's your strategy?
Well, okay. So to be honest, I've been bad at that sometimes. I've you know, you try to be a certain way and you just fail miserably. I've had situations, I'll give an example. So like my daughter was having surgery and she ended up having to stay at the hospital for like a week. So I was basically living at the hospital, coming and doing the show and going back, that sort of thing. And it was a case of like, no, I can do this, you know, I'll go and do my work. And I look back at that now and I really shouldn't have, you know, I should have just stayed there. But because I did bring it to work, I did bring, you know, all that stress to work. And so there's definitely been times, but luckily I work with people now who get it. You know what I mean? And we all cover for each other. You know, if someone's, you know, feeling a little down, okay, let's not give them the hard piece. You know, I'll pick up the slack today. Don't worry about it. That sort of thing. And it was a lesson I had to learn about probably about 4 or 5 years ago. I've really tried to take it to heart since. I had this idea in my head that if you were stressed out about something, you know, if you're walking around and something terrible is going on in your life, right? You're just worried about it, whatever. You might be wearing it, you know, you might be a little down, you might be a little quiet or whatever. I was having in my head when I was younger that, well, if I'm not mad at you, if it's not an interaction that you and I had, then, you know, what do you care if I'm feeling down? That sort of thing. I never understood that, especially when you're in a position of leadership, that if I walk in there and I'm feeling down, I'm going to affect the room, whether I want to or not. So we figured out a shorthand with each other when times were rough, because everybody gets medical problems, everybody gets mental health, stress, all that sort of thing. So we figured out a shorthand of just being able to walk in and just being like, I need a day, that sort of thing. And, you know, people didn't have to share anything that they didn't need to share, that sort of thing. And it became really important, but it took me being bad at it to get there.
You're the lead. If you're the lead, I've just got this idea that there's somebody who's like, there's a leader and there's a follower. It's like, you know, the person with landmines walks 20 feet ahead, blows up the landmines. What's your support team like and what do they do?
So in terms of immediate editing, so we have two other editors, Chris Heller, Matt Shaw. They are editing comedy segments. They're editing remotes just like me. Most of the difference between our positions, and this to me is just kind of the philosophy of being a lead to me, is that like someone just has to make calls. We need to put on a show during a pandemic. How do we do that? We need one person to say how to do it. So in that case, that's really me. So I'm doing all the same comedy. I'm doing all the segments, remotes, so on and so forth. I'm usually handed the ball when something needs a very tight turnaround because they know I'm very fast. But in terms of the other guys, I mean, they're handling all the interviews. They're handling, when we do travel shows, they are picking up a heavier ball than I am on the travel shows. So that's how we kind of manage that balance, because we still have a daily show to tend to, where I put most of my attention on that daily show. So they are free to push the travel show more forward. And I try to pick up the pieces where in the travel shows that maybe aren't the most exciting versus others, that sort of thing, because you try to get people, excited about what they're assigned. So I try to, we try to create an environment that, they get to pick what they want to work on, that sort of thing. Otherwise, we have our genius head of IT, Rob Gage, who solves, when I had the idea of, hey, let's have Conan, work on the Zoom. Well, how's that going to work? And he's the one who actually makes that happen in terms of, making sure we have the right tools and making sure the tools are working correctly. We also have a post coordinator who handles assignments, handles a lot of communication about stuff that, so if they need to work out how to get a clip to Colbert, I don't have to do 10 meetings and 10 emails about it. I can just, she can just hand me, hey, it's going to this person, basically shorthands everything, because, once again, less words I'm a big fan of, and that allows me to keep the speed going. We also have two graphics artists, a graphics coordinator, and our clips coordinator, who downloads all the stock footage, which especially in the pandemic we use a lot of, because that's a big grab bag for humor. And
probably more graphics too, right?
Actually, not as much as you would think. Believe it or not, I had this discussion with
graphics is content,
Yeah, it's. I think part of it, especially in a late night format, is graphics really come into play for desk pieces, which are like stuff where celebrity Twitters and stuff like that, where you're really presenting, a kind of round robin of jokes. And I think they've strayed away a lot from those because there hasn't been a crowd. And so those pieces play very well to a crowd, and we just don't, we don't have it. So we did some, but not as much as you would think, I think. So
I have this one other question that's probably kind of weird, but if you weren't doing late night comedy, what would you want to be doing?
Work in a lighthouse.
Yeah. In the kitchen.
Well, if it has a kitchen, so much the better. But as long as I have a fridge, just like a lighthouse with Xbox and not too many stairs. I don't know. No.
Lighthouse with not too many stairs.
Elevator. Come on, it's a lighthouse. It's modern technology. Can make these things work.
In editing, what would is there any other, would you want to keep doing what you're doing, or would you go back to acting?
No, I'm done with acting. My wife would leave me if I ever told her I wanted to be an actor again. And I love my wife and don't want her to leave me. I think it's funny because you look out there and there's a YouTube channel called Special Books for Special Kids, where it's this former special ed teacher. He goes around, he just interviews people with different special needs, different conditions, that sort of thing, and just creates these great little videos that show people what different conditions are like, and you get to know the people, and you see that they're just human. I look at that, I was like, man, that work is just pure, and that's me. I have the utmost respect for that guy, and so maybe something like that. Animation would be my other real choice. I got a taste of it by editing the Spider-Verse cold open for Comic-Con, and I fell in love with it. Absolutely loved it because I forget who asked initially about being part of the conception of a piece, and that's exactly what animation editing is. You're there in the creation, and you're basically helping them make the movie over and over and over again, and really being a part of the real meaty creative discussions about what something could look like. Because it's a little bit different from editing narrative and scripted and stuff, because you're handed what they filmed. Where animation, you're part of what that becomes. I guarantee you that an editor was part of that discussion of like that montage and up, because I'll go back to that over and over, that one in particular, because that movie does not work without that montage, because otherwise you just got a grumpy old man who just like hates kids. Sorry, my daughter's yelling at me again. So that to me I found fascinating. And by the way, as a special feature on Inside Out from Pixar, there's a lovely little short film about animation editing, which I found really cool. And there's a really cool YouTube video on animatic editing. If you just looked it up on YouTube, it's really well put together about how it works and stuff, because it made me curious.
What was that? That was
on YouTube. Just look up animatic editing.
Yeah.
And you should see. It's like one of the first choices. There's like a doodle. It's a really very informative video about how it all works.
So if Pixar called tomorrow and said they needed someone to come edit their next feature, you'd be there, right?
Yeah, I mean, my only hesitation is the price of rentals and property up in Emeryville.
Well, they might let you work remote, but
absolutely.
One question I had, I mean, and this is, I'm sure you get asked this all the time, but with so many years, so many bits, is there one that you've done that stands out that you look at? Maybe it's not the funniest one, but the thing that you did over the years that you point to and say, that was my favorite one for X, Y, or Z. Maybe it is because it was the funniest one. Maybe it had creative challenges that really pushed you, that you had to overcome to get it to where it was. What was that bit, if there was one?
One comes to mind, and let's see if you guys will find it as funny as I find it. We did this, speaking of...
Do you want to work at freedom with a...
It's fun when you misspell a link on YouTube and you discover what that misspelling gets you.
There's a lot of people that are upset about a lot of things these days. People are arguing about whether they should get vaccinated or not. Have you gotten vaccinated?
Yeah.
There was two pieces come to mind. One I can't show you, one I can. One was the end of the Tonight Show, the last week of the Tonight Show. I don't know if you guys remember swine flu. but swine flu was happening at the time. And NBC had a very strict policy about if you had the flu, you had to stay away for like 2 weeks. Well, about a week before our last show, I got the flu. And they tested me, and they were serious about it. So they had me leave. They escorted me off the lot, and they told me they like sprayed down my room. Like they were super serious about it. So I wanted to be part of the last show. I mean, it was a big, news thing that was happening, a big event that was happening. So I went to a urgent care center and basically bribed the guy into let me. I totally still had the flu, but like I was like, because you had to have a doctor's note, and so I went back the night before our last show, and I got the show done. And after the show, Mike Sweeney, the head writer at the time, went up to me and goes, "We want to do a montage for the last show." And this was 9:00 at night, and they wanted a montage of the last year of programming. And I said, "Okay, leave me alone. I'm going to let me stay here and do it." And I did. I stayed there till like 4 a.m. Went home, got a couple hours sleep, came back. And they had me work with a writer by the name of Michael Gordon in the morning. And we did it and we nailed it. And they gave me just one piece of creative, which was to use the cold open of The Tonight Show had him running across America. And so they said, just intertwine it with that. So that gave me a really easy structure, talking about seeing the song in your head. It's like, okay, we'll lose this shot, and we're going to, use the same opening song again, which was Cheap Trick Surrender. And so we nailed it, and it played into the show, and it got real applause. And that was probably, after going through a year in the show, things get applause. Hey, that was cool. But this got, if you could find it on YouTube, like, the crowd didn't stop. And so much so that Conan was like, we're supposed to do a show. And that to me was like, that was a great honor, because it's like, I got to be part of that. And, it wasn't just really about just editing the piece. It was what was happening at the time, and, everything that kind of led to that point. On a completely different note, I edited this piece called The Rub Light, which is it's a simple little commercial, but for some reason it's just so dumb and funny. And that to me is like my favorite part. My favorite version of comedy is just completely stupid, inconsequential, who cares, it's just dumb kind of comedy. And I had an extra day to work on it, because most commercials especially are done in the same day. And I put it together, and like I did like an image treatment on it, which at the time they weren't really into doing. And I'll play it for you. And what to me makes it is Conan's laugh in the end, because it's coming from a real, like he felt about it like I did. Like, it's just so dumb, but man, it's funny. So let's see if I can play for you here. Short enough.
This unforgettable vacation memory. It didn't actually begin here.
Well, we'll watch an ad.
This memory began when Mom booked her family's summer vacation early on Verbal. Book early, cancel if you need to.
Yes, I cut that Verbo ad.
Finally, a portable light for those hard-to-reach places that you can rub on anything. What? Introducing Rub Light. You can rub it on the wall, you can rub it on a ball, you can rub it on a stall, and that's not all. You can rub it on feet, you can rub it on meat, you can rub it on a cleat, you can rub it on the street.
Does rubbing turn it on?
No, the power switch does that.
Well, then what does rubbing
have to do with it? It's the Rub Light. Oh, you can rub it on a chair, you can rub it on your hair, you can rub it on a stair, you can rub it in the air, you can rub it on a pickle, you can rub it on a nickel, you can rub it on a picture of the wrinkle with the sickle, you can rub it on a bagel, you can rub it on a knob, you can rub it on corn right over on the cob.
I don't get what the rubbing has to do with it.
Well, then you're an idiot. Because with Rub Light, you can rub it on a line. You can rub it on a time. You can rub it on people. You can rub it on time. You can rub it on a towel. You can rub it on an owl. You can rub it on a lady who's frozen in a scalp.
Well, why rubbing? Can you please just tell me? No, more. No more. Tell me why rubbing.
Rub it on a burger. You can rub it on a chicken. You can rub it on a copy of the supper noodles chicken. You can rub it on bread. You can rub it on salami. You can rub it on a Rubik's or a piece of origami. You can rub it on a glass. You can rub it on an ass. You can rub it on a
Hey, it's fine. It's fine. It's gonna be fine. He just wanted you to know that you can rub it on your shirt. Rub it on the dog. Rub it on top. It's over. It is over.
Rub Light. Only $49.99.
That's my favorite thing in a long time. It's so stupid.
I'm a person that struggled with every aspect of healthcare you can imagine my entire life.
The highest
And then I walked.
compliment that you can ever get from Conan is for him to look at laughing, saying that something is so stupid. That's the actually highest form of flattery that you can get. And especially like you can see in the eyes, like he's really just, it's making the boss man laugh. That really, that's the highest form of flattery you can get on the show. Especially with someone like with such a track record. And because particularly in a lot of pieces you edit, sometimes your job is really just to get out of the way of comedy and just let things play and how they were naturally filmed, that sort of thing. And sometimes really like what skill set you bring to the table makes the difference. And that was a case of because without the timing of the thing, it's just a bunch of footage of objects with a song. So it's really about building the frustration of the thing. And then so a lot of things lined up, and that's definitely one of the things like I'm happiest with. Some other things too, like you get to cut pieces with celebrities. We did like Conan making out with Ryan Reynolds. That was fun. And that particular piece, like I appreciate because I only had like 90 minutes to do the whole thing. So sometimes you get to do stuff with cool celebrities. Sometimes you get to do stuff stylistically that you've always wanted to try, getting to edit animation, different styles, music video style. And then, really for me, other than that, it becomes like, the spark of the challenge sometimes, where we did a while ago, we did a fan-made episode where fans, remade sections of an episode, like every 12 seconds, like, there'd be a new fan clip, and, we got thousands of submissions for it. So it was like, how does this become a show? And that challenge within itself became fun to try to figure out. So, I always call these things like the spark, the thing that really like, keeps you going, because, truth be told, like, just like any other job, you don't get the spark every day. So, once you have it though, like you really want to, you want to protect it. You want to hold on to it. Because you don't know when the next one's coming, so.
All right, we'll do
your side of it.
We'll do two more questions and then we'll wrap it up. So John, go ahead.
Well, Andy hasn't gone yet. Go for it, Andy.
Go for it, Andy.
Unmute. Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah. Rob, with 10 years plus of footage coming to an end on, at the end of the month, I mean, have you just like got hard drives and hard drives of stuff? You're just going through old content, nothing at home. It's all just sitting there.
I'm very, like I've done my reels, like they're done, and I don't need to hold on to anything past that.
Yeah.
Part of the beauty about working for a company that is so web oriented, it's like, it's all there. Like I don't need to, But as far as like, I'm not a big fan of like holding on to your own stuff.
No, not for you, but I mean, you've gone through for the last show at the end of the month, you're going through a decade look back.
Oh yes.
You know?
Yeah, no, of course. Like, yeah, we've got, you know, not just the last show too. They got some stuff planned for
The last
transition.
week.
Well, no, just transition period, like even after we're off the air.
Yeah.
In terms of like playing best ofs and, you know, stuff like that. Yeah, we're definitely going through that stuff right now.
Okay.
It's basically what we've been doing the past 4 weeks.
Right. And from a tech side, you know, you've got your home system, but are you remoting into your edit bay?
Now we are.
A lot? Yeah.
Yeah, now we are. We started by using Frame.io as basically like a virtual ISIS.
Mm-hmm.
We basically made a clone of it in the cloud and we just check things in and out. But that's only because we didn't have access to the lot. Once we got access to the lot, like we had like 2 points of internet contact, which means like if we lost signal on one, we could switch to another. Then we started remoting in. So that's basically what we're doing now, as if we were there.
Right. All right. Thank you.
Cool.
Good to see you, Andy. John, you got the final question.
Just wondering about the Premiere side of it. So why did you choose Premiere for something at this rapid pace? Was there something specific about it? And are there tips on how you leverage things that people don't really think about very often?
Great example. Okay. I can go a little bit, Eric, right? Because this kind of
you can go as long as you want, man.
Okay. Yeah, I'm in no hurry. So the quick version, and then I'm going to give you a long answer. They ruined Final Cut, and I needed to have something that was close to it as possible for everyone to jump on, because there was never going to be time to learn something entirely new. That's the quick version. The real version of the story is that we live in an environment where I always laugh when I hear people making proxies of things, or like, you know, converting before editing and stuff like that, as if we ever were given that time, that sort of thing. So we needed something. And if anybody is avid centric, please feel free to correct me. It's if I'm given a piece and I have 10 MP4s, an H.265, an iPhone being filmed on variable frame rate, and a DVC Pro HD P2 card, I need it all to play. And more importantly, if I'm going to open up that project again in 5 years, I need it all to reconnect, which is my problem with Avid. From a Media Connect standpoint, yeah, if you need to slam something together, absolutely, you're going to be fine. Opening it up in 5 years where you forgot to transcode the footage, you're going to get hurt. So a lot of it for Premiere was because I could play an MP4, I could play an H.265, all that kind of stuff, using a tool that was close enough to Final Cut to get it to where it works. But I'm a big proponent of the philosophy, honestly, that I have kind of a centered amount of tools. And what I mean by that is I have, let's see if we can get this working. Okay, so this is my edit system. So I edit off of Wacom Cintiq using a Stream Deck, Elgato Stream Deck as shortcuts. By the way, I'm a big fan of using a Cintiq to edit. I've had a lot of RSI problems in the past couple of years, a lot of carpal tunnel type stuff. Never an issue when I use it. And also for me, there was, you're going to laugh at this, but I have to demo it. There's something about when you're editing that you get to use part of your body to be part of it, that you're really engaging, that I found like doesn't quite ring true. Ugh, terrible angle. Doesn't quite ring true in the same way when you're just looking at, you know, two monitors. I really was a huge fan of engaging with that. We're asked to key, we're asked to color correct all the time. I mean, Adobe obviously has its thing with After Effects, Photoshop, you know, working with these tools all the time. And plus being, you know, being in the position of making that Final Cut video all those years ago, Adobe reached out to us and they wanted to hear what we had to say. I could tell you part of the real story of that. So the video was a comedy bit. A lot of people, like, you know, even to this day, will come up to me and be like, oh, like, can't believe Conan let you guys on the show to, you know, talk about Final Cut. It's like, no, dude, like, you know, like a writer wrote that. And like, you know, it's a comedy bit, you know. But the good parts that did come out of it were Adobe came to us and they're like, do you have legitimate problems? Like, what can we solve for you? And they started listening, and some of the features that we asked for, they started adding to what we were doing. And so we became like a big believer in what they were trying to accomplish. If I were to launch the show today, I'd still do it on Premiere. I see Resolve creeping up, but there's a lot of it is, there's beauty in the little things. And those little things will bite you in the ass in terms of things that a lot of people outside of a show wouldn't necessarily think about. So take Final Cut 10, which I know is a very capable piece of software. It's very fast. It does what it can do. But can I find people who know how to use it? Number one. Number two, can I get it working how I need it to work in a shared environment? Number two. You know, number three, you know, all these questions come into play. And so Resolve to me is still in that category. You can have a brilliant piece of software, but if I can't find easily 10 other editors to call in, if I need to bring somebody in, what's the point? You know, I mean, don't get me wrong, you know, so instead I take that opportunity when Resolve comes around and has like a badass tracker on it. You know, I try to call Adobe up and be like, let's get that badass tracker going. You know, come on guys, you're Adobe. You know, that's actually, I don't know if anyone saw the follow-up video we did, John Adobe. We did it as a joke. That's where that Freddie Mercury thing came into play. You can find it on YouTube. It's very old at this point. But that whole premise of that doing that video came out of a joke with our meetings with Adobe, because I'd ask for, like, you know, why can't Premiere have this After Effects filter? They'd be like, oh, well, you know, it's different engineers and stuff. And then I'd be like, but you're Adobe. Like, literally, like, go down the hallway and tell John Adobe to get his freaking code in order. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're literally Adobe. Walk down the hallway and talk to him. So that became a joke out of it. And then after that, it was really about just, you know, roasting the other edit companies, just because, I don't know, it's fun, you know, to roast people, especially, you know, when they have it coming, which they still do. So a lot of the choices with Premiere were very practical ones. Can I find people who know how to use it? Yes. Does it work with a bunch of different kinds of footage very easily? Yes. That's why you find a lot of live programming uses Premiere, especially in comedy world. Like almost every show at 30 Rock uses Premiere because it's simple. You know, I can get what I need to get done quickly. And don't fall... I don't know if people are into like the tech scene on YouTube or anything, but one thing I could say is, like, try not to be into specs on things, because specs don't really matter, like your Geekbench scores and stuff like that. And, you know, basing, you know, a editing system's performance based on well, the candlelight test gets 60 frames per second on this configuration, but 42 on this other one, where it's like, well, okay, but are you doing pieces where you add 5 levels of noise reduction to a floating candle and resolve? Is that the kind of work you're doing every day? Well, no. So that's part of your decision making, but really, that sort of thing, so it's a big part of it just has to be thinking about things practically and thinking about things as a team.
How does Stream Deck? How do you use Stream Deck in partnership?
Sorry. Yeah, I skipped over that. So get this back going. See, it's blooming a little bit, but you can kind of see. So if I go into Premiere, so I have set shortcuts that I just work off of. These are my go-tos. These are what I'm, this is where I do 85% of my show. It's just right here. I can program this for Avid. I can program this for Resolve, so on and so forth. So it's really easy to just, jump in between whatever tool that I need to use to get the job done.
So you're setting up sequences of keystrokes in there, or are you, what are you programming?
That's how I'm editing. So, I can take you through. These are just basically in and outs, deletes, overwrites. I was taught to be a storyboard editor, which is just a lot of like trim to head, trim to tail type approach. Going on to like, speaking of montages, like, here's one I'm working on right now. So I throw everything on a timeline and, I just trim to head, trim to tail a lot of times, a lot of edits, that sort of thing. Modifier keys, export buttons, zooms, that sort of thing. It's, I basically did I recorded my keystrokes over like doing 2 shows, and I just programmed the ones I use the most. And that's what ended up working for me. And so between that and just using the pen with what I have just visually on my interface, it's all I really need. And I don't find myself really looking for much. Every once in a while, but honestly, anything that you find outside of that, you're in a special circumstance anyway. So it's fine if you take an extra whole 20 seconds to, find a trim tool you're not used to using that much. You know what I mean?
Are you running all that on a MacBook Pro?
No, I got an iMac Pro.
Got it.
Yeah. I've done a couple shows. I have an M1 MacBook Pro, and I hooked it up to the Cintiq. I did like 2 shows on it. Worked fine. It's tough to base it though on it because I'm still remoting in. So was I able to remote into my Mac Pro at work? Yeah, sure. Worked on the M1, I've done a couple little pieces on it. I think it's got a very strong future ahead of it, but I don't know what that future is. But, we'll see. The codec engine on it's brilliant. I want every PC manufacturer to rip that off. The rest of it, we'll see how it goes.
Didn't I see on Twitter you were in the market for a Windows machine?
Yes, and that still might happen, but it depends. It was for a particular project. I'm a big believer in not building a PC, but only because I want to hurt things when I do that, and I don't like to hurt things. And so I would rather have someone to blame when things go wrong. And so I think I'm really impressed with the work Puget Systems do.
Yeah, they build really good systems.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you can't go wrong with them.
Yeah. I think the day it's sort of the approach to work because I'm not in the business of finishing. You know what I mean? Like I'm handed stuff that's arable usually. But I'm not doing like finishing color correction. I'm not doing like sweetening and stuff like that. So I've never felt the need to get like a HP Z1 or something on something in the $20,000 to $30,000 range. To me, there's never been a need for what I do. Now, there's some people that need that system, obviously, and I've seen Resolve configurations that can go up to 35,000 just for the tower, but I don't need that.
I gave up building systems a long time ago. I have a Windows machine, and the last home built one I had was probably 15 or 17 years ago. And I tried to put memory in it one day, thought I was just, I'm like, oh, bought some more RAM. This will be great. Put it in. Turns out didn't put it in right. Totally blew out the motherboard. And had to start completely over, and it was at that point too when I had no one to call. I called my geeky friend who helped me put it together, and he was a waste of time. And so after that I found HP. I talked to the Adobe folks, and it was between HP and a couple other places, and I've been using the HP workstations since then. But you're right. It's like the warranty's great. If I have any problems, I just call them. But it's like I don't want to be IT. I want to edit.
Yeah.
So I want someone to blame if something goes wrong, and I need somebody to come fix it. And for me, that's always been great about HP is their warranties. But I hear you on like building systems. I don't want, and that's always been, I think, some of the appeal. I see why people like Mac is because you just buy it and it works, and that's great.
So for me, the PC in particular was I was talking to a company about doing a project with Unreal Engine, and I see a huge market with that in the coming years, just having knowledge of how to deal with the ins and outs of anything coming from there. So that was part of the original. And there's stuff too, like, tinkered around with the idea of maybe doing a YouTube channel, maybe a live stream here or there, just doing a lot of research. And plus, let's talk real. Like, I did a configuration the other day, and Puget's, the Mac Pro, and this was, kind of a built down one was 12,000, and Puget was 6. I could buy 2 Pugets. That's what happens, and that's the reality of it. So it's like, how much do I really love the Mac? Well, at the time, because I got this iMac Pro particular for the pandemic stuff, was, I couldn't plug in a PC because all the, stuff at work was Mac. So it had to be Mac. Once again, these practical questions kind of get in the way of stuff. So there it is.
All right.
I'm sorry. Can I just ask this?
Yeah, go ahead. One last question.
Unless I don't want to keep anybody.
No, go ahead. You got the final question.
Oh, okay. Rob, you just touched on something that I really want to ask about. It was about, you said you're not, finishing the edit. So you'll edit it, and then I guess you'll send it off to somebody else once it's fully locked?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, it's done. It's just, I'm not in the act of a show I started on. I was a symphony editor, or I, redigitized and color corrected and stuff like that. I just send it out for air.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, the act of finishing, the act of throwing things in a proc amp, I'm aging myself by saying that, but, so that's just not something that happens in live. When they're recording, at least in a studio environment, there's someone on a paint box to make sure your color's correct. There's someone doing the audio mixing to make sure it's recorded correct. Do you have to fix things here and there? Yeah. During the pandemic shows, have we had to do more of that? Yes. But that's the nature of environment because we don't have those tools handy now. But there isn't, even with the travel shows, there was never like a locked, picture lock, go to, Resolve to finish it out. They've never been able to work that way. They want the flexibility of being able to change and edit up till airtime. So there was never a chance for it.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you very much. Also, as far as like carpal tunnel and all that stuff goes, like I've found that the Herman Miller chairs, really expensive, but have really helped at least my arm and my hand. Something about the structure of it.
Cool.
Just thought I'd let anybody know.
Fair enough. I play too much Xbox. That's my
I interned at a place that was super, when I was in college, that was it was a visual effects company, and so everybody was just, mouse clicking all day long, and they were on us about carpal tunnel and getting up, and the philosophy was, you had to get up every hour and do something for a couple minutes. It didn't matter what you did, walk to the bathroom, whatever. One of the people I worked with said you throw a ball against the wall just to sort of, just to get your body active. I still keep, I don't throw this one, but I still have, a baseball here, just going to keep that. I've done that. I have a little rubber ball over by my edit desk right over there that I'll throw against the wall every hour just to sort of break that up. So
I change mouse positions. I change keyboard positions like all the time. Like that's a big go-to because sometimes I'm in the thick of it and can't stop. So I'll just move where things are just to change the body up.
Yep.
But like I said, the Cintiq has been a real help for that. The tablet was good too. I just like the Cintiq more because, like I said, you engage your body more.
One last thing I'm going to ask, and then we'll do our final. We'll wrap up here. But was it you that cut the Mad Max bit?
Yes.
That is my favorite bit that I've done because I'm a huge fan of that movie. First off, and without question, my wife, she wasn't that big a fan of the movie for she just didn't like it for whatever reason. But that bit, she just thinks it's hysterical.
All right.
We will put that on sometimes and just laugh and just So I love you for just doing that. So
cool.
Anyway,
that was a very expensive bit.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, and at some point, whenever next time you're in San Diego, by the way, I am buying you dinner, lunch, whatever, drinks, and I would love to hear about the behind the scenes of that bit. But
fish tacos in Old Town.
Yes, there you go. So, all right, Rob. Well, thank you so much for presenting, man. This was it's lived up to everything I was hoping it would be. It was so great. Well, folks, that is our June meeting. Rob, dude, like I said, I can't thank you enough. I know you are so busy, and to finally have you present after all these years, it was so awesome. So thank you. I totally owe you. And it was just amazing. One last thing. So Conan's wrapping up. Have you thought about what you're going to do next? Are you just going to take some time off and kind of figure out what you're going to do next? Or do you already have kind of like a plan and like, as soon as we do this, we're moving on to that?
Yes.
Okay. Good answer. I'm going to start looking for your name in Pixar credits and hopefully I'll see it there one day. So,
well, we'll see.
All right, everybody. With that note, I will say goodbye and we will see you in July. Third Wednesday in July, everybody. Take care. Thanks again, Rob.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much. Thank you.